What needs to happen and who needs to step up for the Oklahoma Sooners to get to 10 wins? We'll talk about that and more on today's episode of Locked On Sooners.
You are Locked On Sooners, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma Sooners, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Sooner Nation? Welcome to Locked On Sooners, and thank you for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase over at Gametime. My name is John Williams. You can follow me on Twitter at John9Williams. Buddy, here's Josh Helmer. You can follow him on Twitter at JoshOnRev. You can also hear him Monday through Friday from 9 to noon on the KREF Sports app. And Josh, there's a lot still to play for. The Oklahoma Sooners have an outside shot at reaching the Big 12 title game, even though it is a little bit slim. The odds have decreased. The chances have decreased. You're going to need a lot more help from outside parties, namely other members of the Big 12, but there's still a chance. And, Drake Stoops was interviewed after practice on Monday night and had a really, great thought on all this. He said, I come in here day in, day out, 10 hours in here every day. And for me, there's a lot left to play for. I bust my tail year round for this for 6 years now. So I'm not really listening to what people say. I don't care if we're 0-8 right now. I'm playing ball because I love to play football. I love my teammates. I love my coaches. I love the University of Oklahoma. It's really that simple. I got a lot of pride for this place. That comment is from, or that quote from Parker Thune, who's out there at practice on Monday evening. But the Oklahoma Sooners do have a lot to play for, not just the pride aspect of it, but they still have a shot. So what's it going to take for Oklahoma to get there? And really, who's going to have to step up is kind of the bigger question, because over the last 3 games, we've seen a drop off in their play and in their production.
Well, first off, it's great to hear Drake Stoops have that approach, because, you would be shocked to hear the opposite, right? To see somebody come out into the media spectrum and in the public eye, and all of a sudden they're down in the dumps 2 days after the fact, talking about, there's not much for us, or Big 12 championship hopes, or Dash, or college football playoff, whatever. That would be out of the norm. But I believe in that. He feels like there's a lot to play for. If nothing, then just beyond, this is Oklahoma, and obviously his own story at Oklahoma, right? Even beyond Bob Stoops, but just Drake being a part of OU and what it means to him to play for Oklahoma football, what it should mean to everybody to play for Oklahoma football. So that's nice to hear that you've got at least one voice willing to say that. Nah, we still got plenty to play for in these next 3. Who needs to step up? Well, a lot of folks need to step up for Oklahoma. I think defensively up front, need a couple more difference makers up front. Number of different names you could throw my direction there. Obviously, Dillon Gabriel, you can't have the interception in this last game. We've been pining for chances, and then can't have that mistake. Your center has to play better. I mean, you can't be in a situation where you can't snap the football, John. You get multiple possessions away trying to snap the football. So a bunch of guys need to step up, but I would probably start with, can we operate effectively to begin with?
Yeah, the center was the one that really stuck out to me. And Andrew Rame, he's been playing this game long enough, and he's been a starter for the Sooners long enough that snapping the football should not be an issue. Like, that's something that should be automatic at this point, as automatic as Dillon Gabriel throwing a screen pass. Like, it's something they've repped thousands of times. You should not have the same issues that we're having right now. It'd be different if this was a true freshman center just getting his feet wet at college football. He's got a lot that he's trying to process in addition to snapping the football. But again, in this day and age in college football, when everything is run out of shotgun, snapping should be the least problematic part of your job. And it should be the least problematic part of an offense. But here we are. We're having the adventure. I think you're right. The defensive line does need to step up a little bit. And I want to see the defensive backfield play a little bit better too, because Alan Bowman, man, he had a career game against the Oklahoma Sooners. Now, he's a capable quarterback, just that wasn't asked to do a whole lot for much of this year. but when Gundy put it on his shoulders to go lead their team, he played really, really well. And I think some of it was, okay, obviously we can get into some Rashad Owens discussion on whether how much of his separation ability was due to his ability to push off and get away with it, or if it's just, the coverage that wasn't there. I mean, there were a lot of times Brennan Presley was running free and having a lot of space as well. So I think the defensive backfield has to improve as well. But this week in particular, against a Garrett Green and CJ Donaldson, who are really good at running the football, your defensive line is going to have to be much better than what it was this past week, because yes, they were able to make plays against Ollie Gordon in the run game, but the dude still ran for 133, had a couple big runs that really killed you. And Alan Bowman, I mean, if he didn't have time, he was able to buy time and get out of the pocket and throw the football away. So you really didn't put a whole lot of pressure on their quarterback. I think Pro Football Focus had only 8 pressures from Oklahoma, and they're pretty liberal with their pressures. They'll give them out if the quarterback's knocked off his spot. And that's not a lot in a game. And it's clear that the Sooners defensive front hasn't played as well in the last few games as they played even against Texas.
There's no doubt. Who needs to step up? I would say collectively, Oklahoma, and Key Lawrence comes to mind if he's going to be out there, because he seemed to be one of the culprits in the missed tackling department. I saw, I apologize, I think it was Eli Letterman that tossed the stat out about Jaren Kanak is missing 40% of tackles or some crazy number. And I don't know if that was 40% of the missed tackles of late had been Jaren Kanak. So I don't want to totally misspeak here. Bottom line is, you catch my drift. Jaren Kanak is one of the guilty parties in the missed tackles department for Oklahoma. I think those two guys, if they're going to continue to get legitimate snaps, John, which, okay, a couple of guys get healthy. It sounds like Peyton Bowen this week will be closer to back to full speed and getting regular snaps like we saw early in the season. So that's going to be a welcome sight for Oklahoma. But if Key Lawrence is still out there a decent amount, he's got to tackle better when given opportunities. We saw the one pretty bad missed tackle early in the game. Kanak, I don't know. I mean, he might be slipping down that depth chart now. I think he's got a chance to be a really good backer in time, John, but it kind of is what it is right now. Kip Lewis and Kobe McKenzie, at least this past game and maybe the last several games, look like better options for Oklahoma if Stutzman is still not totally ready to go. So who needs to step up? Well, guys, if they're out there, they got to make some plays collectively. And not just those two guys. It's larger than just those two. Oklahoma as a team needs to tackle better. But if you're telling me that Kip Lewis and Kobe McKenzie are going to play more, well, okay, we need more of what we saw on Saturday. So those would be a couple of guys for Oklahoma that it seems like it's trending, John, that they're going to have to continue to step up and deliver that type of play.
So I just went over to Pro Football Focus and took a look at their numbers. Jaren Kanak is missing 25% of his tackle attempts. That's not great. But a lot of guys are missing a lot of tackles. I mean, Key Lawrence is right there too at 25%. Billy Bowman's a little bit higher, 29.4. Gentry, our man Gentry Williams, who's had a really good season, he's missing 30% of his tackle attempts. And again, this is going to be a little bit subjective based on the way Pro Football Focus analyzes plays and things like that. But obviously missing way too many tackles. And they've played good players. There's no doubt about that. But they're not team tackling very well. And I think that's maybe the difference is before the bye week, okay, they were missing tackles, but they were team tackling. They were rallying to the football as a unit and getting there and getting the guy down. If it wasn't on first contact, the second contact was like right there. Right now, it feels like, okay, you missed the first tackle and then the guy's got room to run. He's got space. Well, that needs to get cleaned up. And I think you're right. I mean, right now, the coverage at the linebacker level hasn't been necessarily great either, but you're seeing Kip Lewis be a little bit more consistent in the tackling department. Kobe McKenzie, I mean, this is his kind of first extended run at college football. I mean, he didn't really play a whole lot last year if he played at all. And so we're starting to see him get his feet wet. Can he continue to thrive and get better? We'll see. I think tight end, I mean, Steven over here is mentioning Austin Stogner needs to either step up or sit on the bench and put Sexton out there on the line. Stog can't open the field up or can't open field block at all, and he isn't getting targets when he runs routes. I'm kind of with you. I mean, if it's not going to be effective, then there's not much reason to have him out there because teams don't really have to see him much as a blocking threat or a receiving threat right now. You could get away with it if he was only catching one pass per game, but he was providing like good to like even just above average blocking. And it's not been that way. And you hate to see that. And you don't want to like single one guy out in particular, but the tight end room just has not been good. And so I'd rather them, like he suggests, use an extra offensive lineman. Because again, the guy's not really providing much of a threat in the passing game. So put your extra offensive lineman out there, even for pass pro, and then you can run your running backs out there in pass route situations, or just have an extra offensive lineman out there to run block. And I think you'd be much more effective. But we can dive into a few more of these things a little bit later in the show. We're going to ask the question that a few people are asking on Twitter, and I've got a bit of a take for how we should approach the Dillon Gabriel, Jackson Arnold situation with a few games left to go. We'll talk more about that after the break. If you're looking for last minute tickets and you're not finding exactly what you're looking for, you got to go check out Gametime. There is a great option for you, whether you're looking for concerts, football tickets, Oklahoma City Thunder. The Gametime app has got you covered with last minute deals and the best prices guaranteed. You can go to Gametime, download the app in your app store or the Google Play Store. Right now, if you're looking at Mountaineers tickets, I'm sitting here looking at, the Gametime, the app right now, and I'm seeing, hey, there's a lot of options still for getting West Virginia. The upper sideline, section 108, row 27, $38 right now on the Gametime app. I'm seeing tickets in the end zone for in the 40s. Like, there's a lot of great options available to you over at the Gametime app. So don't miss out on a chance to get great deals at great prices using Gametime. It's the number one app available for last minute tickets. Create an account, use a code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply, but you can create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Okay, Josh, not very many people are asking the question, but there are some asking the question. And as you know, the college football playoff, that's kind of the big ticket, right? As soon as that went out the window, people were asking for Caleb Williams to sit down the rest of the season and just, start getting ready for the NFL. And now that the college football playoff is kind of off the table for the Oklahoma Sooners, people are starting to wonder, is it time to play Jackson Arnold? I do think it is time to play Jackson Arnold, but only in limited circumstances or in certain circumstances. I don't think it has to be we're in a blowout, we're up by 20 in the fourth quarter, now we can play Jackson Arnold. I think it'd be wise to create a package of plays or a scripted series for Jackson Arnold to have a series in like the third quarter in each of the final three games. You don't have to put him out there for a half or a quarter or give him a 50-50, snap share, but create a series for Jackson Arnold that lets him get out there with the first team offense, gets his feet wet, and just goes and plays football. I mentioned it on Twitter earlier that this team has not been very good in the third quarter in recent weeks. Why not kind of mix some things up a little bit? And, after the first or second drive of the third quarter, let's call it the Jackson Arnold drive, where you give him an opportunity to go get some experience, go get some playing time, and maybe take a shot at having something productive happen for your offense. Teams are not necessarily having to game plan for him right now. But again, it'd be a great opportunity just to get him some experience before you're throwing him into the deep water next year.
So I want to address this from Terrence, which I think is a good question, and probably others would ask, why burn a red shirt with Jackson Arnold when there's no way to get into the playoffs? And let me preface this response by saying, I don't think that magically we're going to see a ton of Jackson Arnold the next couple of weeks. Maybe I'll get proven wrong on that, but I think that this coaching staff is going to let Dillon Gabriel sort of ride this thing out and see this thing out, as in some ways, though in different camps of the Oklahoma fan base, maybe some people feel like he hasn't, quote unquote, earned the right to do that, John. I think the coaching staff will feel like Dillon Gabriel has earned the right to finish this season as its starting quarterback. for good or for bad, for the most part, right? But okay, let's play the hypothetical game. Let's play the hypothetical of Jackson Arnold does start getting some serious looks. If you lose one more game, okay, well then that could open the whole thing up to where you do consider playing Jackson Arnold, not as, hey, here's a series, but as, hey, let's let him start a couple of games. Why would you be willing to risk the red shirt? I don't think red shirts are as important as they used to be. And this is me, I'm not saying that this is the gospel of football and everybody has to bow down at the altar and subscribe to it. It's just a personal thought that I have that I don't think they matter as much anymore. And especially for somebody like Jackson Arnold, if we were talking about a different program that had a 3-star kid that was all of a sudden going to be the next starting quarterback, then okay, maybe you think about not burning that season. But at a place like Oklahoma, where Jackson Arnold is, he comes in with what? The quarterbacking awards, the Elite 11 that he won. And he's the
Gatorade National Player of the Year and
all of them, right? So, and thank you for the assist on the Elite 11. Yeah. 5-star kid. He's that guy, right? He's on the timeline to be a 3 years and off to the NFL. Mentally, though, probably he won't say it. Probably he and a lot of people that in his camp feel like, okay, I'm not necessarily on the 4-year plan. And if things don't go totally according to plan, John, then that redshirt year, he'd still be back the next season anyways, if he's not the first-round draft pick that probably he down the road expects or hopes to be. So to me, I don't know. I just don't think you lose much. I think you gain more, I guess is the point I'm trying to make, by potentially playing him as you transition into the SEC next season. Everybody, if he comes in and plays a couple of series or starts a couple of games, if they go that route, John, and he's great, well, number one, then people are going to be asking the question, wait a second, why wasn't he playing before? So that's one Pandora's box you could open. But the positive to it would be, okay, now suddenly you're much more prepared for next season and beyond. And again, I just don't think the redshirt season matters as much.
No, I think you're absolutely right on that, because if he's as good as everybody thinks he's going to be, he's not going to be at Oklahoma for 5 seasons. He's just not going to be. He won't be here for 4 years. He'll play 2 years with the Sooners, and then he'll be off to the NFL. And that's why it's so important to have, the Michael Hawkins and the Kevin Sperry. And forgive me, there's another quarterback in the 2024 cycle that I'm blanking on his name, so forgive me about that. But that's why it's so important to make sure you have good quarterback depth, because when you have talented players, they're not going to be with you for very long. But you've got to get him opportunities to play. He's already played in 4 games this year. Steven mentioned again, man, Steven, he's showing up strong in the chat right now. They put him in for a snap, but then a penalty happened and they took him out and they punted. So he has played in 4 officially. I don't think the redshirt thing is that much of an issue. If it were, obviously don't play him, but you don't need to be concerned with that. You need to get him ready for being the starting quarterback at the University of Oklahoma. And there's no time like the present. There's no better time and no better opportunity than what you're running into this year, when you get the opportunity to give him live game reps against really good defenses. I mean, West Virginia is not the best defense in the country, but they're a good defense. And, anytime that you have the opportunity to give a guy game reps, it's valuable. It's absolutely 100% valuable. They love Dylan Gabriel. Dylan Gabriel has been really good for this team this year. This is no slight. This is no, bench Dylan Gabriel conversation, because he's been really good. And he's been a big reason why you've had an opportunity to win these football games. You still got to get your guy ready. You still got to build toward the future. And that's the other part of why I love why they're giving guys like Makari Vickers opportunities, in a game where everybody's kind of struggling to contain Rashad Owens. Throw a guy out there and give him a chance. You're seeing more Robert Spears Jennings. You're seeing these young guys get chances to make something of themselves this year, even if they're more significantly going to be players down the road. So yes, get some Jackson Arnold reps in. Yes, give him an opportunity to play. Again, it doesn't have to be you give him the half or you give him a quarter or it's a 50-50 split, but just design some situations, give him a series where you let him go run the offense. And I'm not just saying go out there and hand the ball off, or go out there and run the Jackson Arnold quarterback run, power run pseudo Blake Bell offense. No, let him go run the offense because he's done a good job when he has. So he looks like a guy that's going to be capable of it. Let's start putting some stuff on film that you allow him to build from as he goes into his first full off season with the Sooners.
Brent Venables said something that was sort of interesting at his Rudy's Coaches show tonight with Chris Plank and Teddy Lehman, that basically OU had a Rolodex of plays that would have been better on that 4th down and 5 snap. And I say that, and we can deep dive that comment if you want, because I think it merits its own introspection or inspection, introspection for Brent and inspection for you and I. When we talk about Jackson Arnold and think about Jeff Lebby, if Brent Venables on any level is thinking, okay, do I have to make a big change this offseason? Do you want to play Jackson Arnold a little bit with Jeff Lebby as the offensive coordinator to find out if this pairing is something that, yes, okay, is going to work and we need to stick with? Is there anything there?
I'm sorry. I blanked. My wife sent me a text message and I completely blanked on what we were saying.
Is everything okay?
Yeah, everything's good. Everything's good. Sorry.
Okay. No, all good. Let me reset this for you, okay? So, is there anything to the idea that Brent Venables, if there's a sliver of doubt in his mind about, do I need to make a big picture offensive coordinator change, that I need to see in live bullets, right? Live action, what the pairing of Jeff Lebby, Jackson Arnold is? Is there anything there? Now, there's a can of worms you kind of open, I think, if you play him and it goes poorly at the end of the year. So then a not great season in some ways relative to what Oklahoma fans would want, all of a sudden ends on even more of a downer if you play the 5-star quarterback and there's a bunch of offensive issues, right? So I don't know. It's a nuanced decision. It's not an easy decision, but what about that? Do you put anything into, okay, I want to find out if this offensive coordinator with that quarterback, if that's the missing link?
I think it's a fair part of the discussion. I don't think Brent Venables wants necessarily to bail on Jeff Lebby after just 2 seasons as they are continuing to build this program. Brent Venables to me doesn't seem very short-sighted. He seems like a guy that's got a big picture view of the program he wants to lead. And as much as maybe we're frustrated with Jeff Lebby, and even Brent Venables might be frustrated with Jeff Lebby in the way that he's running the offense, I don't know if there's this sense that, okay, it's just downright awful, like it's not good at times and it can be better at times. And as much crap as I'll give Jeff Lebby for some of the situational play calling that they've made, all in all, big picture view, it's been good. It just hasn't come through in clutch moments. So there's a lot of nuance to this discussion, because if you're looking long-term, and I don't even think this is if you get rid of Jeff Lebby, you're losing Jackson Arnold discussion, because I don't think the two are that hand in hand. I think one doesn't have anything to do with the other, but I do think that there is something there to, hey, let's see if this would work better with Jackson Arnold at the helm in a Jeff Lebby offense, or if it's really just a Jeff Lebby situation. Then, I mean, I think that pretty much makes your decision for you. But I don't think Jeff Lebby's going anywhere after this season unless he decides he wants to go somewhere else after this season. And we can touch on more of that. We'll touch on the Drake Stoops play call, the Rolodex discussion that Brent Venables dropped on the Rudy's Coaches show. We'll do all that after the break.
Score early this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins for new customers in those bonus bets. Just a $5 moneyline bet, $150. It could be yours if your team wins. So if you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, well, there's no better time than now to get in on the action. Oklahoma, by the way, this week versus West Virginia. Well, where are the Sooners at? They are a 12.5-point favorite. So if you like that, given the way things are going, that feels like a lot of points, but maybe you're more in on the over and under. The number there, 58.5, as we sit here right now today. So FanDuel Sportsbook, that's the place to join. And again, so easy to use their app. Spreads, player props, over under, so much more. Wide range of options. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season, or join right here in the college football season. FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, an official partner of the NFL.
All right. In the Rudy's Coaches Show, Brent Venables dropped a little nugget. This is courtesy of George Stoya from Twitter. He said, probably have a Rolodex of better plays when talking about the 4th and 5 play at the end of the game. And this has been my contention about that play. That is a 2-point conversion play. That's a 4th and 1 play. That's a 3rd and 1 play. That's not a 4th and 5 play. That's a play designed to just get the yardage you need and only the yardage you need. And that's why I'm so frustrated by the whole discourse about that play. Jeff Levy talking about how Drake Stoops should have ran it, to the sticks and get, the 5 yards. Well, you look at the play and it's pretty congested to the short side of the field. I don't know if he even gets the ball if he was running it to 5 yards, because there's not a whole lot of room over there to run it. And so there's so many issues with the play call as it was. And it's clear that Brent Venables has an issue with the play call as well. And I'm honestly glad to hear him kind of subtweet his offensive coordinator a little bit. We just saw out west Lincoln Riley, kind of go to bat for Alex Grinch, week after week after week after week, until he finally pulled the trigger and fired the guy. I'd rather see my head coach be like, nope, I think we could have done better there, and kind of call out his offensive coordinator, say, hey, you got to be better there too. Like, if we're all going to fall on our swords, me, the head coach in particular, it's I don't know what the right word is. It's enlightening, or it's heartwarming to see, like, not only is he not going to let his offensive coordinator get away with throwing somebody else under the bus, he's willing to throw his offensive coordinator under the bus and say, hey, we could have had a better play call there.
I need more time to digest it, to be honest with you. I'm pretty mixed on that remark. I like that clearly Brent Venables understands it wasn't good enough, right? So my initial reaction was sort of to cheer, right? That was like, all right, go get him. But as I've sat and thought more about it, I find that it almost upsets me a little bit though too, because number one, it acknowledges again that the play call wasn't good enough. So why then was the play call made? If there's a Rolodex of plays that are better than that, why did you then, as the head coach, not step in and get a better play call? Why did you not call timeout? I mean, this is, to Oklahoma fans, this is your season on the line. They want to go to the college football playoff. They want to win the Big 12 championship. Not that the Big 12 championship is totally out, but look, it's going to be a lot more difficult and frankly, probably unlikely at this point, even though those percentages say Oklahoma's second highest percentage, according to ESPN, to win the Big 12, but that's neither here nor there from the number folks out there. So I don't know. I mean, I think it's a good thing to some degree, but I don't think it's great either on a different perspective, because you didn't step in and get things fixed right there. So that to me is another example of, okay, is Brent Venables going to get to that point to where he just manages the games a little bit better and steps in and adjusts accordingly when need be?
I can't remember who it was that I saw talk about this, and I think it might have been like a former offensive lineman, just talk about the time it takes to get the play call, relay the play call, and communicate everything that's going on a, between one snap and the next. And almost as if to say, like, does the head coach doesn't really have a chance, unless he just straight up calls a timeout, doesn't really have a chance to go in and interject a whole lot and say, no, I think we need to do something different, and then have a discussion about that. It's hard for me to get in on the head coach should stop the coordinator from making the play call. But I mean, with ruthless self-evaluation, I mean, you got to think like there's a better call to be made. I think after the game, Brent Venables kind of defended the play call, but with a couple days to really go back and look at things, he's less of a believer in what they did on 4th and 5 there. So yeah, I mean, I think this is a team that's still trying to figure some things out, and Brent Venables as a head coach is still figuring things out. The question is going to be at some point, especially if they don't finish the season well, how long do you let him figure things out? Because the game management part of this team is becoming a factor. And I still believe that Brent Venables is getting better in that way. But as games have gotten tighter, the situation has gotten tighter, he's not been as good. So the whole coaching staff, and Brent Venables included, needs to quit taking 15-yard penalties. The whole coaching staff needs to continue to improve, and they got to continue to get better, because right now Oklahoma's not playing its best football. Sooner Cowboys is mentioning it over on the YouTube chat. The team never left the Cotton Bowl. And I think there's something kind of valid about what the team played like against Texas and what they've played like the last 3 weeks. Were they just playing up to their opponent and raising their standard of play to go play against a team that was a top 5 team? Or is it that just the production, the performance have fallen off? I think it's a little bit of both, because they've not been as clean. They've not been a team that, has protected the football well. They've been really penalized a ton, and this is just not a team playing really, really clean football. And that's a coaching thing. That's a player execution thing as well. It's everybody. But I don't mind that, Brent Venables is willing to, he's willing to take the blame for losses. I've watched his post-game press conferences the last 2 weeks, and that dude looks like somebody just took his cat and is holding it for ransom when they lose a game. And he's willing to take, fall on the sword for the team and talk about how they got to be better. He also wants that, I think, from his coaching staff too, a willingness to say, hey, we could have been better in a situation where, as Jeff Lebby, we talked about it already, Jeff Lebby's saying, no, the wide receiver should have run the route deeper than he did. That's not accountability. That's passing the buck. And I don't think that's what Brent Venables is all about. So all that to say, I still think it could have been better. It could have been better. It could have been better executed if they'd gone to the big side of the field. So I don't know. I'm kind of rambling on at this point about all this, because I've had 2 days to argue with people about how poor of a play call that was with Jeff Lebby.
Well, and I would say this, I don't necessarily subscribe to 2 wrongs makes a right. I don't know that because your OC throws a player under the bus, you then turn around and throw your OC under the bus as a leader.
That's fair.
But that being said, I can see he's going to bat for his player too, because his OC didn't. So I do think maybe there's a little bit of that at play. But one thing, regardless of opinions about it, from a should he or should he have not said that remark, I do think this is true. To me, that's the first signal that absolutely Jeff Lebby has been put on notice. Now, I don't think we're going to get that in so many words publicly, but I think you can kind of read in between the lines from Brent Venables saying we got a Rolodex that plays better than that, to pretty clearly put the puzzle pieces in place that, okay, job performance is, look, it's rocket science, right? I got you. Oklahoma's 7-2. They've lost back-to-back games that they led at the end of the third quarter. That doesn't happen a lot to Oklahoma, where you don't find a way to go finish a game. So everybody is getting evaluated, right? But it feels like, yes, there's some serious job performance evaluation happening with the OC, which, frankly, that's where we're at. It should be happening.
It should be happening. And this is a really interesting question from Jet here as we start to dig into your questions, your comments here on the Locked On Sooners YouTube live show. Did Joe C force Lebby on BV? I don't think so. I feel like this was Brent Venables reaching out to a guy he had familiarity with, he had connection with, and thought it would be a good fit to run the offense. And again, as much as I want to crap on what's gone on with Jeff Lebby in key situations, the offense has been pretty good. And I don't want to completely ignore, again, the 2 botched snaps, the Nick Anderson drop. Now, it would not have been a walk-in touchdown. Go back and watch that play. He was falling as he was trying to catch that ball. He would not have walked in for a touchdown, but it's a big play that Nick Anderson dropped. There's the Nick Anderson offensive pass interference where he's trying to run the pick play and he doesn't sell it well enough. And Brendan Thompson drops the pass on that play when it's a key fourth down situation. So there were a lot of offensive mistakes that are not your offensive coordinator's fault. Like, he calls the play, he dials something up that works pretty well. And then again, you come back to the Drake Stoops non-call and pass interference. Oklahoma kind of got what he wanted. I mean, now throwing a fade route to Drake Stoops one-on-one with tight coverage is not necessarily the choice I'd make. At the same time, he did his job and he drew a pass interference. It just wasn't called.
Well,
so I felt like, Levy played or called a decent game, and he's right in some ways in saying better execution and they maybe win that game. At the same time, he also has to execute better too. So as much as I want to throw everything on Jeff Levy, the players got to execute better as well. This is a total team effort.
No doubt. I mean, it's more than just the offensive coordinator. The fourth down call, though, we all agree was not good enough. It was terrible.
They executed it. I mean, Dylan Gabriel executed it. Drake Stoops executed. He ran to where he had room to run.
And yet you can't make that play call there. The pass interference that was not called on Drake Stoops, that's a touchdown if he doesn't get interfered with. Yeah. He's coming down with it in the end zone. So, and
contrary to what Jeff Swain wants to say, the defensive back was the reason Drake Stoops was going out of bounds, because he was tackling the dude out of bounds before the ball ever got there. Oh, don't get me started on that again.
I don't publicly react or respond to fake expansion reporters.
I don't even know who the dude is. I just saw that he does okay preps reporting. I'm not sure if that's a thing, but all right, let's answer a few questions here. Sawchek was playing well in the first half. Why the Houdini act? Where'd he go? I think some of this is just, they wanted to get Tobby Walker some run, and Tobby Walker played well. I have no real issue with the way that they handled the running back situation. Gavin Sawchek was really, really good in the first half, and he made some plays in the second half, but they were also trying to get Tobby Walker some touches as well, because you needed him to. Marcus Major wasn't fully available, it didn't seem like, because you didn't see him out there, and Javonte Barnes, it just hasn't clicked for some reason with Javonte Barnes this year.
Yeah, and I think it's a fair question if you're talking about the offensive coordinator and this coaching staff, which, again, it's Brent Venables giving up the control, right, to an offensive coordinator, and that Jeff Levy's in charge, makes the decision, and DeMarco Murray, Jeff Levy probably saying, okay, DeMarco, you're in charge of the running backs. You put somebody out there that really hasn't done anything particularly effective for you. Again, I do assign a good bit of blame to Andrew Rame for snapping the football where it was not supposed to be snapped. But that being said, I mean, you got somebody in Javonte Barnes out there that hasn't really been Javonte Barnes that we saw a year ago this season. So he panics a little bit, and all of a sudden it's a turnover, right? You got somebody that basically in arguably the biggest game of the season, or one of them, to me, comes off the bench cold, right? Really, for basically the entirety of the season, the guy hasn't really played for you, and yet you bring him in that spot. So curious. I don't know. I don't know what to make of a lot of that outside of it wasn't a good decision.
Yeah, and then why was Smothers in the game on a critical down? I can't remember exactly what situation this was, but it did seem odd to me that Dalen Smothers was getting a lot of opportunities as well. I mean, again, he's a good player and someone we're excited about. It just, I don't know, the running back rotation, the running back usage has been kind of odd this season. And I think some of it just comes back to Sawchek and Barnes weren't healthy all offseason for the most part. And then you get into the season and Marcus Major and Tobby Walker haven't really been healthy. So your top four running backs at the position have all dealt with injuries over this calendar year. And that probably makes it hard for a running back coach to figure out how to best to utilize these guys, because you don't know who you're going to have available to you in practice or week to week and game to game. Yeah, man, it's odd all the way around. The rotation that they've got at running back has been really weird. Weren't most OU fans calling for Smothers, though, at Okie Traders or Okie Trades asks for?
Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I think some were asking for Dalen Smothers, and I would like to see Dalen Smothers as well. But they didn't really, I didn't feel like they really gave him a lot of opportunities. They gave him a couple handoffs. Let me see if I can find the stats real quick. Dalen Smothers had...
It's a good point. It's a good point, because I do think Oklahoma fans have been in that camp of, hey, let's see Hicks Smothers. But to me, John, and I'll be brief here, it just speaks to the overall inability of Oklahoma to really find the running back situation.
Mm-hmm.
So you're dialing and trying up every single thing that you can. And guess what? Now the next thing you try is even worse than the previous thing you had. So that's the story of Oklahoma's running backs this year.
It's been weird. So they got Dalen Smothers in the game, but they only threw the ball to him one time and he picked up 1 yard. They never handed the ball to him. And I feel like running back is such a rhythm position. You got to give guys opportunities to get into a rhythm a little bit and get a feel for the way blocking is going to work up front and way, the defense is playing them. And so I'm not even going to sit here and say Dalen Smothers had a bad game because he didn't really play much. And you can't really judge it based on the limited opportunities that he got.
Do you think that snap back to Javonte Barnes, are you buying it that it was intended to be? Because look, our man, the Hall of Fame college football with Jason and the coach, some good comments tonight. Nope, that was the call. And I would imagine, I'll be honest with you, I've wondered this too, if we should take them at full transparency here. I tend to believe it because Javonte Barnes then tried to turn and hand the football right back off to Dillon Gabriel. So that kind of makes me take them at face value that it was a broken play. But our friend here says, nope, that was the call to snap it to Javonte Barnes. I don't believe that it was just a horrible snap. Are you getting in on any conspiracy here?
We've seen him run the running back direct snap, and that was my immediate reaction was, why do you keep running this play? Because it's terrible. It never works. But when Brent Venables said that was supposed to be a snap to the quarterback, I thought, hey, why not? I mean, it makes sense. And I don't know if there was just like a miscommunication on the play call or if it was just a bad snap or what happened on that one. But all in all, it was just terrible. And the snap really puts everybody in the jackpot. Everybody is going to struggle with what to do with the ball after that. I mean, Javonte Barnes probably should just ate it and not try to hand it off to Dillon Gabriel. But you see people do this. You see them direct snap it to the running back and then hand it off to the quarterback who then runs wide and then throws a pass, which again, if that was the play call, I'm irritated at that because Oklahoma had just had a big play to get him to midfield. And then you run some trickeration, which is not working for the Sooners right now. And then if it was supposed to be straight to Dillon Gabriel, then again, it's on Andrew Rame and you got to snap better, bro. You just have to. It has to be better. There's no excuse for the poor snaps that we've had right now. It's just not. So I'm buying that it was probably supposed to go to Dillon Gabriel and it was probably going to be like a play action pass or something like that. I have to go back and look at the all 22 and see what the wide receivers were doing on that play, because I think that would give us a bit of an indication. But all in all, it was terrible. Just terrible.
How are we feeling about this West Virginia game? Do you feel optimistic going into this? I mean, obviously Oklahoma's lost back-to-back games. Green was a troublemaker for Oklahoma a year ago, shall we say? I mean, 12.5-point favorite per FanDuel Sportsbook. What do you think? It's prime time. The Unity uniforms, we saw that, right? That Oklahoma's rocking the Unities for this contest. Just generally speaking, your early week feel, how are you feeling about this game?
Early week, I'm not feeling great about it just because of 2 losses and some really inconsistent play on both sides of the football. Some undisciplined play where you're giving up a lot of penalties, you're giving up turnovers, you're not, playing great, you're not tackling well. I don't love it. Probably by the end of the week, I'll feel better about it because I don't trust Garrett Green to beat this team. But I didn't think Alan Bowman had it in him to go and have a career day either against the Sooners. So I don't love the point spread. If you're asking me from a betting standpoint, I would have a really, really hard time right now taking Oklahoma minus 12.5, 13 points. That would be really, really tough. But I think Oklahoma's playing good enough football to win this game. It's just they got to put some things together and they got to play cleaner football. They cannot have as many mistakes as they've had the last 2 weeks and expect to beat a West Virginia team that's playing much better than they were a year ago when they beat Oklahoma on the road, when Oklahoma was on the road. Now this game is going to be in Norman, so that gives you an opportunity to be better, but you got to simply execute better. You got to play better. You cannot have as many mistakes. You cannot have 8 penalties. You can't have 3 turnovers. You can't have as many missed tackles as they've had, because especially on defense, and we talked about it on our last show. I mean, defensively, they did enough in this game to win the football game. They absolutely did. As even though there were, there were some situations where there were poor tackling, even though they gave up 27 points, some of that was due to the offense turning the ball over at midfield or at the 20-yard line and giving Oklahoma State a short field to deal with. It's the offense, man. If the offense can just simply get back to executing the offense better and not have as many pre-snap penalties, then I'll feel great about this thing. But if they come into it and they play as undisciplined as they've played in recent weeks, then, I mean, to me, it's off the, like, all bets are on. Like, West Virginia could easily win this game. So we'll see. I don't feel great about it right now, but probably as the week goes along, I'll feel better about where Oklahoma stands. It's just West Virginia is playing good football, and they could come in and sneak a win out if you're not careful, Sooner fans.
Feels like right now, maybe anybody left on the schedule could do that. And yet, West Virginia's, that's the clear best team you've got left on the schedule. Obviously, West Virginia beat TCU earlier this year, and we know that TCU's a 4-5 football team that's not trending in a positive direction. They got routed by Kansas State, lost again to Texas Tech. So that's not TCU that some thought TCU would be this year. I think you and I were sort of in the expectation that TCU was a pretty good fallback candidate relative to, okay, go to the national championship game or being a Big 12 championship contender. So this is the toughest game left, I think you've got, right? I mean, West Virginia just took it to BYU 37-7. So I think OU is going to win all of these games. And I think it starts this week against West Virginia. The fact that you're at home should be helpful. I think that is going to be a welcome sight for OU to just get back to Gaylord Family Oklahoma Memorial Stadium, where the crowd's not a factor in this one in a negative way for Oklahoma, because obviously they've gotten off to poor road starts each of these last two. So coming home should help Oklahoma. And again, if they can just negate a couple of these boneheaded mistakes that they've had each of the past two games against Kansas and Oklahoma State, John, probably we're talking about an unbeaten football team right now. But obviously you can't live in the hypothetical world. We have to live in and exist in reality. And to some degree, if you're making those types of mistakes in consecutive weeks, well, now all of a sudden you are that football team. But if Oklahoma can get back to the Oklahoma that we saw that was right toward the top of the nation, leading the nation in turnover margin, then I think they're going to win this game by a couple of scores.
Yeah, I feel like West Virginia will come into this thing with a little bit of a conservative approach, but I think they're also going to throw, all the chips on the table and take chances at times too. They're going to want to run the football. And if Oklahoma can stop the run and put Garrett Green in some second and third and long situations, then I'll feel great about this. I mean, CJ Donaldson's a really good running back. Garrett Green's a really good running quarterback. And I think that's going to be the focus of their offensive game plan is run the football, try to keep it in, keep ahead of schedule, get yourself into, second and short, third and short, fourth and short situations, and try to be efficient and pick up first downs. That's what they did in the second half last year. I mean, it was not this big offensive explosion against Oklahoma. It's just they were able to stay ahead of the chains and pick up first downs. Now, Oklahoma's been really, really good on third down. They've been really good on fourth down. They've been good against the run, even though Ollie Gordon did have a good rushing day. All in all, they were pretty good against a really arguably the best running back in college football. They played a pretty solid game. So if they can go out there and continue to play with that same effort, if they get Danny Stutzman back, I think that's key too in this one. And get Danny Stutzman, get your defensive line playing a little bit better and maintain rush lanes against a Garrett Green who he'll take off and run when the first opportunity is available. So if you can maintain containment, maintain discipline on your rush lanes, and use a guy like maybe a Kip Lewis to spy him, I think that would be a fantastic, or Jaron Kanik to spy him. I think that'd be a fantastic game plan going into this one and get everybody back on track a little bit.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. It'll be important for the rest of the season for Oklahoma to find a way to get back on track and get into the win column in this thing. If you can do that this week, then all of a sudden double figure win seems gettable for Oklahoma. And again, as I said earlier this week, the complexion of this year, living in the back-to-back losses, John, it feels like, okay, this season maybe because you beat Texas and you haven't backed it up since. You've played, let's call it what it is, three below average football games in relation to what you were or what we thought you were coming out of the Texas game. Where we're living right now, it feels like, okay, this Oklahoma team has failed to meet our expectations to some degree, but all of a sudden you win these final three, go win a bowl game, and the sun rises tomorrow and things are looking up, especially if you can do it in rather convincing fashion. So I hope we see that. I think, to me, this week it starts with stopping Garrett Green running the football. If Oklahoma can do that and force him to be a passer, obviously they need to be better in coverage. It's not just been sticky coverage at all times back there, John. I'd like to see Oklahoma press man a little bit. I don't understand why Oklahoma doesn't do that. And, this is like the age-old Oklahoma defensive complaint is, why will Oklahoma not just, bump and run receivers at times, get up on those guys? At times, I think Oklahoma, I know there's been a pass interference call here or there, but to me, why give up that little 8-yard cushion to start? I'd like to see Oklahoma just get a little bit more aggressive with the way that they align to start. But to me, it begins with, you got to be able to stop the quarterback running the football. If you can do that and force him to be a thrower, then probably, as long as this isn't the game where you turn it over 3 times again, I think OU's going to win.
Yeah. And the more I think about it, the more I feel better about Oklahoma winning. West Virginia has been good, but they rank 60th in points per game allowed on defense. And on offense, they rank 40th at 31.4 points per game. So you're scoring a lot more than they are. Your defense is just a little bit better than they are allowing points. So to me, it all points to an Oklahoma win. You get it at home, you get things back on track, and you got an opportunity to finish the season strong. Anything else? Any parting thoughts that we need to discuss here, Josh, before we get out of here?
I don't know that anything specific comes to mind. I think we hit all of the items maybe that we wanted to talk about today. There's so much more. I'll be curious to see what some of the feedback is on the Jackson Arnold conversation. I think that is, we've sort of had our Jackson Arnold conversation maybe for this week, for the right here, right now. I know we're going to get those questions again and again, and I think it's going to take on a life of its own over the course of this week, especially. Then if Dylan Gabriel goes out and Oklahoma plays really well, John, then I think you see maybe the fan base to some degree come back around to the idea, okay, let's finish this season strong, try and get 10 wins. Obviously, if you lose, then it only ratchets up. So I'll be curious to just watch the lifespan of all of that sort of conversation this week. And then let's hear from Brent Venables tomorrow. Let's hear everything that he has to say coming out of this game, his final Bedlam thoughts.
Yeah, I don't see any scenario where they completely hand the reins over to Jackson Arnold. I just don't think Dylan Gabriel is going to be bad enough for that to be the case. But I would like to see him get a series per game. Just one series. That's all I want to see out of Jackson Arnold. Just let him get his feet wet, let him get some playing time, and see what happens. But that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Sooners. Thanks so much for tuning in and being a part of the show. Subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. We're free and available on every platform and on YouTube. Hit that notification bell to let you know when new episodes drop. Follow Josh on Twitter at JoshOnRef, myself at John9Williams. The show is at Locked On Sooners. But until next time, he's Josh. I'm John. Boomer Sooner.